Bramblewood Audio presents Little Daylight by George MacDonald, narrated by Cameron Ward. Part 2. She had lain for a long hour or longer when the prince began again to doubt concerning her. Perhaps she was but a vision of his own fancy, or was she a spirit of the wood, after all? If so, he too would haunt the wood, glad to have lost kingdom and everything for the hope of being near her. He would build him a hut in the forest, and there he would live for the pure chance of seeing her again. Upon nights like this, at least, she would come out and bask in the moonlight, and make his soul blessed. But while he thus dreamed, she sprang to her feet, turned her face full to the moon, and began singing as she would draw her down from the sky by the power of her entrancing voice. She looked more beautiful than ever. Again she began dancing to her own music, and danced away into the distance. Once more she returned in a similar manner, but although he was watching as eagerly as before, what with fatigue and what with gazing, he fell fast asleep before she came near him. When he awoke, it was broad daylight, and the princess was nowhere. He could not leave the place. What if she should come the next night? He would gladly endure a day's hunger to see her yet again. He would buckle his belt quite tight. He walked round the glade to see if he could discover any prints of her feet. But the grass was so short, and her steps had been so light, that she had not left a single trace behind her. He walked halfway round the wood without seeing anything to account for her presence. Then he spied a lovely little house, with thatched roof and low eaves, surrounded by an exquisite garden, with doves and peacocks walking in it. Of course, this must be where the gracious lady who loved the moonlight lived. Forgetting his appearance, he walked towards the door, determined to make inquiries. But as he passed a little pond full of gold and silver fishes, he caught sight of himself and turned to find the door to the kitchen. There he knocked and asked for a piece of bread. The good-natured cook brought him in and gave him an excellent breakfast, which the prince found nothing the worse for being served in the kitchen. While he ate, he talked with his entertainer, and learned that this was the favorite retreat of the Princess Daylight. But he learned nothing more, both because he was afraid of seeming inquisitive, and because the cook did not choose to be heard talking about her mistress to a peasant lad who had begged for his breakfast. As he rose to take his leave, it occurred to him that he might not be so far from the old woman's cottage as he had thought, and he asked the cook whether she knew anything of such a place, describing it as well as he could. She said she knew it well enough, adding with a smile, "It's there you're going, is it?" "Yes, if it's not far off." "It's not more than 3 miles, but mind what you are about, you know." "Why do you say that?" "If you're after any mischief, she'll make you repent it." "The best thing that could happen under the circumstances," remarked the prince. "What do you mean by that?" asked the cook. "Why, it stands to reason," answered the prince, "that if you wish to do anything wrong, the best thing for you is to be made to repent of it." "I see," said the cook. "Well, I think you may venture. She's a good old soul." "Which way does it lie from here?" asked the prince. She gave him full instructions, and he left her with many thanks. Being now refreshed, however, the prince did not go back to the cottage that day. He remained in the forest, amusing himself as best he could, but waiting anxiously for the night, in the hope that the princess would again appear. Nor was he disappointed, for directly the moon rose, he spied a glimmering shape far across the glade. As it drew nearer, he saw it was she indeed, not dressed in white as before. In a pale blue like the sky, she looked lovelier still. He thought it was that the blue suited her yet better than the white. He did not know that she was really more beautiful because the moon was nearer the full. In fact, the next night was full moon, and the princess would then be at the zenith of her loveliness. The prince feared for some time that she was not coming near his hiding place that night, but the circles in her dance ever widened as the moon rose, until at last they embraced the whole glade, and she came still closer to the trees where he was hiding than she had come the night before. He was entranced with her loveliness, for it was indeed a marvelous thing. All night long he watched her, but dared not go near her. He would have been ashamed of watching her too, had he not become almost incapable of thinking of anything but how beautiful she was. He watched the whole night long, and saw that as the moon went down, she retreated in smaller and smaller circles, until at last he could see her no more. Weary as he was, he set out for the old woman's cottage, where he arrived just in time for her breakfast, which she shared with him. He then went to bed and slept for many hours. When he awoke, the sun was down, and he departed in great anxiety, lest he should lose a glimpse of the lovely vision. But whether it was by the machinations of the swamp fairy, or merely that it is one thing to go and another to return by the same road, he lost his way. I shall not attempt to describe his misery when the moon rose, and he saw nothing but trees, trees, trees. She was high in the heavens before he reached the glade. Then, indeed, his troubles vanished, for there was the princess, coming dancing towards him, in a dress that shone like gold, and with shoes that glimmered through the grass like fireflies. She was, of course, still more beautiful than before. Like an embodied sunbeam, she passed him, and danced away into the distance. Before she returned in her circle, the clouds had begun to gather about the moon. The wind rose, the trees moaned, and their lighter branches leaned all one way before it. The prince feared that the princess would go in, and he should see her no more that night. But she came dancing on, more jubilant than ever, her golden dress and her sunny hair streaming out upon the blast, waving her arms towards the moon, and in the exuberance of her delight, ordering the clouds away from off her face. The prince could hardly believe she was not a creature of the elements, after all. By the time she had completed another circle, the clouds had gathered deep, and there were growlings of distant thunder. Just as she passed the tree where he stood, a flash of lightning blinded him for a moment, and when he saw again, to his horror, the princess lay on the ground. He darted to her, thinking she had been struck, but when she heard him coming, she was on her feet in a moment. "What do you want?" she asked. "I beg your pardon. I thought—" "The lightning," said the prince, hesitating. "There's nothing the matter," said the princess, waving him off rather haughtily. The poor prince turned and walked towards the wood. "Come back," said Daylight. "I like you. You do what you are told. Are you good?" "Not so good as I should like to be," said the prince. "Then go and grow better," said the princess. Again the disappointed prince turned and went. "Come back," said the princess. He obeyed and stood before her, waiting. "Can you tell me what the sun is like?" she asked. "No," he answered. "But where's the good of asking what you know?" "But I don't know," she rejoined. "Why, everybody knows." "That's the very thing. I'm not everybody. I've never seen the sun." "Then you can't know what it's like till you do see it." "I think you must be a prince," said the princess. "Do I look like one?" said the prince. "I can't quite say that." "Then why do you think so?" "Because you both do what you are told and speak the truth." "Is the sun so very bright?" "As bright as the lightning." "But it doesn't go out like that, does it?" "Oh, no. It shines like the moon, rises and sets like the moon, is much the same shape as the moon, only so bright that you can't look at it for a moment." "But I would look at it," said the princess. "But you couldn't," said the prince. "But I could," said the princess. "Why don't you then?" "Because I can't." "Why can't you?" "Because I can't wake, and I never shall wake until—" Here she hid her face in her hands, turned away, and walked in the slowest, stateliest manner towards the house. The prince ventured to follow her at a little distance, but she turned and made a repellent gesture, which, like a true gentleman prince, he obeyed at once, He waited a long time, but as she did not come near him again, and as the night had now cleared, he set off at last for the old woman's cottage. It was long past midnight when he reached it, but to his surprise, the old woman was paring potatoes at the door. Fairies are fond of doing odd things. Indeed, however they may dissemble, the night is always their day, and so it is with all who have fairy blood in them. "Why, what are you doing there, this time of the night, mother?" said the prince, for that was the kind way in which any young man in his country would address a woman who was much older than himself. "Getting your supper ready, my son," she answered. "Oh, I don't want any supper," said the prince. "Ah, you've seen daylight," said she. "I've seen a princess, who never saw it," said the prince. "Do you like her?" asked the fairy. "Oh, don't I?" said the prince. "More than you would believe, mother." "A fairy can believe anything that ever was or ever could be," said the old woman. "Then are you a fairy?" asked the prince. "Yes," said she. "Then what do you do for things not to believe?" asked the prince. "There's plenty of them. Everything that never was nor ever could be." "Plenty, I grant you," said the prince. "But do you believe there could be a princess who never saw the daylight? Do you believe that now?" This the prince said, not that he doubted the princess, but that he wanted the fairy to tell him more. She was too old a fairy, however, to be caught so easily. "Of all people, fairies must not tell secrets. Besides, she's a princess." "Well, I'll tell you a secret. I'm a prince." "I know that." "How do you know it?" "By the curl of the third eyelash on your left eyelid." "Which corner do you count from?" "That's a secret." "Another secret? Well, at least if I am a prince, there can be no harm in telling me about a princess." "It's just the princes I can't tell." "There ain't any more of them, are there?" said the prince. "What? You don't think you're the only prince in the world, do you?" "Oh, dear no, not at all. But I know there's one too many just at present. Except the princess—" "Yes, yes, that's it," said the fairy. "What's it?" asked the prince. But he could get nothing more out of the fairy, and had to go to bed unanswered, which was something of a trial. Now, wicked fairies will not be bound by the law which the good fairies obey, and this always seems to give the bad the advantage over the good, for they use means to gain their ends which the others will not. But it is all of no consequence, for what they do never succeeds. Nay, in the end it brings about the very thing they are trying to prevent. So you see that somehow, for all their cleverness, wicked fairies are dreadfully stupid. For although from the beginning of the world they have really helped instead of thwarting the good fairies, not one of them is a bit wiser for it. She will try the bad thing just as they all did before her, and succeeds no better, of course. The prince had so far stolen a march upon the swamp fairy that she did not know he was in the neighborhood until after he had seen the princess those 3 times. When she knew it, she consoled herself by thinking that the princess must be far too proud and too modest for any young man to venture even to speak to her before he had seen her 6 times at least. But there was even less danger than the wicked fairy thought, for however much the princess might desire to be set free, she was dreadfully afraid of the wrong prince. Now, however, the fairy was going to do all she could. She so contrived it by her deceitful spells that the next night the prince could not by any endeavor find his way to the glade. It would take me too long to tell her tricks. They would be amusing to us, who know that they could not do any harm, but they were something other than amusing to the poor prince. He wandered about the forest till daylight, and then fell fast asleep. The same thing occurred for 7 following days, during which neither could he find the good fairy's cottage. After the 3rd quarter of the moon, however, the bad fairy thought she might be at ease about the affair for a fortnight at least, for there was no chance of the prince wishing to kiss the princess during that period. So the 1st day of the 4th quarter, he did find the cottage, and the next day he found the glade. For nearly another week he haunted it, but the princess never came. I have little doubt she was on the farther edge of it some part of every night. But at this period she always wore black, and there being little or no light, the prince never saw her, nor would he have known her if he had seen her. How could he have taken the worn, decrepit creature she was now for the glorious Princess Daylight? At last, one night, when there was no moon at all, he ventured near the house. There he heard voices talking, although it was past midnight, for her women were in considerable uneasiness, because the one whose turn it was to watch her had fallen asleep and had not seen which way she went, and this was a night when she would probably wander very far, describing a circle which did not touch the open glade at all, but stretched away from the back of the house, deep into that side of the forest, a part of which the prince knew nothing. When he understood from what they said that she had disappeared, and that she must have gone somewhere in the said direction, he plunged at once into the wood to see if he could find her. For hours he roamed with nothing to guide him but the vague notion of a circle, which on one side bordered on the house, for so much had he picked up from the talk he had overheard. It was getting towards the dawn, but as yet there was no streak of light in the sky, when he came to a great birch tree, and sat down weary at the foot of it. While he sat, very miserable, you may be sure, full of fear for the princess, and wondering how her attendants could take it so quietly, he bethought himself that it would not be a bad plan to light a fire, which, if she were anywhere near, would attract her. This he managed with a tinder-box, which the good fairy had given him. It was just beginning to blaze up, when he heard a moan, which seemed to come from the other side of the tree. He sprung to his feet, but his heart throbbed so that he had to lean for a moment against the tree before he could move. When he got round, there lay a human form in a little dark heap on the earth. There was light enough from his fire to show that it was not the princess. He lifted it in his arms, hardly heavier than a child, and carried it to the flame. The countenance was that of an old woman, but it had a fearfully strange look. A black hood concealed her hair, and her eyes were closed. He laid her down as comfortably as he could, chafed her hands, put a little cordial from a bottle, also the gift of the fairy, into her mouth, took off his coat, and wrapped it about her, and in short did the best he could. In a little while she opened her eyes and looked at him, so pitifully. The tears rose and flowed from her gray, wrinkled cheeks, but she said never a word. She closed her eyes again, but the tears kept on flowing, and her whole appearance was so utterly pitiful that the prince was near crying too. He begged her to tell him what was the matter, promising to do all he could to help her, but still she did not speak. He thought she was dying, and took her in his arms again to carry her to the princess's house, where he thought the good-natured cook might be able to do something for her. When he lifted her, the tears flowed yet faster, and she gave such a sad moan that it went to his very heart. "Mother, mother," he said, "poor mother," and kissed her on the withered lips. She started, and what eyes they were that opened upon him! But he did not see them, for it was still very dark, and he had enough to do to make his way through the trees towards the house. Just as he approached the door, feeling more tired than he could have imagined possible, she was such a little thin old thing, she began to move, and became so restless that, unable to carry her a moment longer, he thought to lay her on the grass. But she stood upright on her feet. Her hood had dropped, and her hair fell about her. The first gleam of the morning was caught on her face. That face was bright as the never-aging dawn, and her eyes were lovely as the sky of darkest blue. The prince recoiled in overmastering wonder. It was Daylight herself whom he had brought from the forest. He fell at her feet, nor dared to look up until she laid her hand upon his head. He rose then. "You kissed me when I was an old woman. There, I kiss you when I am a young princess," murmured Daylight. "Is that the sun coming?" Thank you for listening to this presentation of Little Daylight by George MacDonald. narrated by Cameron Ward. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.